Some of the greatest music ever made is the result of co-writing and collaboration. Think Elton John and Bernie Taupin, John Lennon and Paul McCartney, Carole King and Jerry Goffin. But how and where do we find these other people to work with, and what are we looking for in a potential collaborator? In this video, we answer those questions and take you through a range of strategies and very practical ways to connect with other artists and songwriters who, just like you, are waiting for that next exciting project to come along. And we've created this video using selected scenes and highlights from our brand new online course, How to Write Songs, The Art of Co-Writing and Collaboration. A course that takes you behind the scenes of professional co-writing and helps you build confidence, learn new skills, and ultimately understand what is required to properly prepare and engage in creative collaboration. Now, time to focus on where and how we find our future collaborators.
I think the first thing to say before we give a list of suggestions on where you can physically go to find co-writers is really to understand what are the criteria that we're looking for in a context or a situation, right? So really what we're looking for are situations in which you can hear someone's music, songwriting, their style, in which you can actually get a sense of them as a person, as someone who you might like to sit in a room with for 3 hours, and also in some kind of situation where it's clear that there's a mutual interest in co-writing. So those are the kinds of situations that we are seeking out in which it's likely that you're going to be able to find other people who are interested in co-writing with you. So with that in mind, here are a few suggestions.
So one of the first places I want to talk about is gigs, and specifically local gigs. The great thing about going to local gigs is that A, they're generally smaller. We're talking about, some nice venues of somewhere between 100 and 200 people. And so what's great about small venues is you get to, talk to people. You get to actually mingle with people. It's not one of those big kind of 5,000 person venues where it's unlikely you'll get a chance to connect. The other great thing about local gigs is you're meeting people, from your area or your region. And so it's a perfect opportunity to ask people if they're songwriters, to connect with them over music, and then to actually set up a meeting or to catch up with them for coffee and just start talking about, this idea of collaboration. So small local gigs for me are one of the best places to start that conversation and then start to build a relationship with other songwriters.
Absolutely. And as a flow on from that, open mic nights, they cannot be undervalued in terms of meeting other songwriters. I mean, that's really where it happens. And I would say so many of my musical collaborators and friends 2 decades after starting out as a songwriter come from open mic nights that started, playing open mic nights, then being invited into kind of showcases, and from those showcases meeting other songwriters and musicians. It all kind of starts there. So I think open mic nights are great. And again, in terms of this idea of actually hearing other people's music, I mean, that's where it kind of all happens. So I would highly recommend hitting up some local open mic nights.
Absolutely. And you meet engineers, you meet producers, you meet all kinds of people at those events. So that's a great suggestion. The other great place to meet specifically songwriters is songwriting groups. And songwriting groups are one of those amazing things where you've got everyone there for the same reason. They're all there to develop their songwriting craft. They're all there to essentially support each other and to share their songs with each other. It's the perfect environment to reach out and see if any of those people in that group are interested in actually getting together and co-writing. And Kep, you run several different kinds of songwriting groups. Do you want to just talk about those?
Yeah, so the songwriting groups that I run are really, really simple. Basically, people email me and sign up, and I then allocate people into a group of up to 8 other songwriters from around the world, and I send out a prompt every 2 weeks. And the criteria is that everyone writes a new song to that prompt within that 2-week period, and then you receive a new prompt. And that goes for 8 weeks. So in 8 weeks, people produce 4 new songs. You send them to the group. Everyone hears each other's songs, gets to give each other a little bit of feedback or comments. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to meet other songwriters and hear their work. There are other songwriting groups. So usually in your city, if you live in a city or a town, there will frequently be a local songwriting group, which you can probably find on Facebook. And very frequently, those groups will have a monthly songwriter meetup, something like that. So that can be another really nice location to meet other songwriters in your area.
There are also formal organizations that support songwriters and musicians. And some of these in Australia that I've been part of in the past are the Australian Songwriters Association and the Australian Songwriters Conference Networking Group. Both of those groups, again, are full of people who are already primed to collaborate and co-write because that's what they do. They're looking for people to work with. They're looking for people who understand, the process of songwriting and are willing and able to get together and meet up. So those are two great organizations, and KEP America, where you spent some time, would obviously have equivalent associations.
So there are lots of organizations in the main cities in America, of course, LA, New York and Nashville, the big songwriting hubs. There will be songwriter associations. Some of these are organised through the peak performing rights organisation. So of course in America, those organisations are ASCAP and BMI, as well as CSAC. In Australia, we have APRA. So performing rights associations are the organisations that essentially collect and distribute songwriting royalties. But a lot of the time they will run a variety of different networking events for songwriters in your local area. So absolutely check out the website of those organisations, and we will include links to those organisations so you can check them out. And I think as well as gigs, attending those kinds of events, attending speaker panels, particularly if there are any opportunities where you can submit music and have your music heard by a panel of speakers, a panel of industry professionals, but also, of course, by other people who are there, who will be like you, seeking out these opportunities to meet other songwriters. So looking at those events, having a go, being courageous, turning up, submitting your music, and doing that as much as you can in your local area is going to be a really great way to meet other songwriters.
Finally, there's meetup.com, which is a fantastic way to, again, find people in your local area who are interested in all sorts of things. So if you put songwriting into meetup.com, it's about finding one that's close to you, but then obviously going along and just seeing who's there, striking up a conversation. It's one of those things where the more you do it, the more people you're going to meet, the more likely that you'll find someone who you really work well with.
So we've just talked about a lot of ways that you can actually seek people out in your local community. Of course, if you're looking for co-writes face-to-face, live with people, you need to approach it like that. The other way that you can approach it is more global, right, and use online communities. So one of the things that we run on our Patreon is we have a songwriter member level. And so we have songwriters from all around the world who come together through our Patreon, and monthly we run a live online Q&A session and song feedback session. And that's wonderful. And there are some amazing songwriters on there with a huge diversity of styles and interests. And it's a great way for people to meet people around the world. And of course, one of our goals there is for people to communicate with each other and meet other songwriters from around the world if that's what they're looking for. You can find other communities like that online. And another idea for people, if you're looking for people online around the world, you might think about taking an online class. And there are so many out there. Just Google search it, right? There are some great ones run through Berkeley Online. We will be running some next year. So we'll provide a link to our website, which of course you can have a look at. But really it's more about the concept that taking a class is just a great way to meet people from all over the world who are all inherently interested in the thing you're interested in. And it also gives that great opportunity to hear each other's work and start to feel out whose work you're interested in, meet people who would you be keen to actually spend some time with online writing songs. So those are some other suggestions on how you can go about meeting people online around the world.
And if there is a silver lining to the last couple of years with COVID and the pandemic, I think it is that people have become much more comfortable with working online and collaborating over Zoom, and all of these things have changed in terms of interacting online that really weren't available and people weren't willing to do even a few years ago. So you'll find yourself able to work with people around the world much more easily now, simply because everyone's gotten more used to working online together.
Okay, the last suggestion I have is a little bit out there, but I want to put it on the table anyway, okay? You could take the entrepreneurial approach to finding a co-writer. And particularly if you are looking to co-write or collaborate with someone who is more experienced than you, who is more skilled, who you actually want to learn from in that co-writing situation. So one way that you might do it is simply to find someone that you really want to work with and pay them for that collaboration. Offer them money for a co-write. And it might not even be a co-write. It might be that you contact a songwriter or a producer and say, I'd love you to produce some of my work. I'm willing to pay this much money for it, but I'd really love your input on the songwriting component, and I'm more than happy to make it a co-write if that's what you want, but I'd really love to pay you for your time and your expertise. And that can be a way to get in the door with those people and genuinely really learn from people with experience and expertise in the fields that you want to learn from and who have a lot of experience co-writing. So it sounds out there. I've sort of pitched it as being a really out there idea, but it's really not. And in fact, even me, if I wanted to work with a producer who I had no connection or contact with, I mean, that's what you have to do. You contact them and you pay them, you offer to pay them for their time. And through that conversation, make it really explicit that also what you're looking for is creative input, not just to produce a song that I've written, but you really want them and their songwriting experience to come to the table in a co-write. So that happens all the time and is just another available option for people who can bankroll that, basically.